So welcome if you're just joining me. Hi Sue, nice to have you here. If it's your first time joining me, then I am Julie Walsh. I'm a self-taught artist, and these paint along sessions are really just to find a bit of chill time, play with your watercolour, your paper, your paints, paint some nice scenes, and hopefully discover some new tips, tricks, techniques along the way. So it's about taking the pressure off, having a bit of chill time and just enjoying yourself. So tonight we're going to be, actually I'm just going to check first. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Just checking that my sound's okay. Right, lovely. We may have some tippy tapping from my dog who might want to go in the garden in a minute, but at the moment we're okay. So I'm just going to run through the materials that we've got. If you want a copy of the photograph, if you go into the description, you'll find a link to a Google album, or if you want to join me on my free Skool community, you'll find a copy of the photo, and we will also do some follow-up sort of stuff, discuss what to do, what not to do in hindsight from this, and some other tutorials and bits and pieces. Lovely. So last week we did a nice sunset boat, but one of the things I realised was that the colours weren't dark enough, and one of the difficulties with watercolour is it's quite easy, it's very easy, and it's very common not to put enough pigment in the water. So tonight the challenge of this painting is to get enough colour so that it doesn't look very washed out and insipid in the end. Now this week I haven't given a set of colours. I've made a couple of suggestions over in Skool, but I thought it might be quite good fun to start by having a try out of some of the colours you've got to see what colours you think are going to work for this. So let's just run through the materials first. I'm working on Langton watercolour paper. I've only got half of it taped off, but it is £140 300 GSM. It's cold pressed, not. So it doesn't have a huge amount of texture. It's not 100% cotton, but you know, we'll see how we go with it. I've used it before and it's fine. I've taped it to my board. I'm going to keep an eye on what you can see. I'm just looking at the top of my board to make sure it's in screen, which it just about is. I've got different brushes this week. I bought these on Temu. I have no idea if they're any good, but we shall see. They were £6 for this set. I don't hold out a great deal of hope, but we'll see, shall we? So they are my brushes. I have a pencil because I may just want to draw in the silhouette of my boat towards the end. The idea is that we are going to start with a wet in wet wash, starting at the top, working our way down, and then the boat and the land will be, and the ripples will be painted on after dry on wet. So the colours I had in mind, I've got quite a few out just to think through, and you may be able to look at this picture, and this is one of the reasons it's really good to know what your colours are, what they actually look like, because you could look at this and go, well, I think that's quite a lot of cerulean in that sky, and then that orange looks a bit like a transparent orange, and the water at the bottom is definitely a Prussian or a phthalo, or you begin to get an idea of which colours are right. The other thing I want to talk about is, so let's have a think about this lovely orangey yellow. I want it to look a little bit warmer, so I put a little bit of alizarin out, I've put a few blues out, but my orangey colours, I've got a quinacridone rust, a burnt sienna, a raw sienna, and a light red. And I just wanted to talk to you about the difference between some of these, because light red looks like it might be a good colour, but it's an opaque colour. So it won't work for something like this because you want it to look translucent and transparent. So it's important to know which of your colours are transparent and which are opaque. I have this beautiful azo orange, which is really vivid. And then I have my blue. So I don't know. And I'm working on a completely clean, it's a plate. You don't need a proper palette, but I thought it would make things a little bit easier. And so I can test out a few of the colours first. So here I have a Prussian blue, which is very dark, very dense. I have a cobalt, which is quite a bright blue. And what I want to do, and it's worth you getting out some colours and just for the first few minutes having a play and seeing which colours you think will work for this. This is ultramarine. And I haven't got a phthalo out, but Prussian is phthalo with some other colour in it. Then for my orangey background, I've got a raw sienna, which looks quite nice, but it doesn't quite look warm enough. I've got a quinacridone rust, which might be lovely, but we won't know until we try. And I've got a burnt sienna. So burnt sienna was my original choice for this. And if you can see, even on the palette, you can see it looks quite nice and warm. It's got those orangey undertones. But to warm it up a little bit, and now I'm not going to use all these colours. I want to try them out first. I've got an orange. This is Azo Orange by M. Graham. And then I've got a little bit of a alizarin crimson, which might not actually come out of my tube. So I may have to use that straight out of the tube, but I'll give you an idea. I've got a little bit of paper on the side that I was going to test them out on. So an alizarin or some sort of rose colour. Also, just to mention, I have 2 pots of water. I have one to wash my colour off, and I have one to dip into a clean pot before I go in to another one. So I'm just going to test out some of these colours. So let's look at this. This is Prussian. So that is actually a nice colour for that sky, isn't it? Now I said cerulean. Do I have my cerulean here? Because I can show you what a cerulean looks like in comparison. And I find cerulean a bit of a, it's not a colour I particularly like using because it doesn't run like watercolour does. So it's not dissimilar to the Prussian. The thing about the Prussian is it goes very, very dark. So you can see how that would be good for the bottom colour. And mixed with this alizarin, you begin to get that really rich, deep colour that you want at the bottom of the page. So I might leave my cerulean and I'm going to stick with this, with my Prussian. This is ultramarine. Can you see how that's just too bright? Even very, very watered down, it's still going to be, it's not the right colour. It's cooler than that. This is much closer to the colour I've got in the photograph. Actually, that was cobalt. This is ultramarine. It's got more sort of mauve in it. But again, it's not the right colour for this. So my Prussian is what I'm going to stick with. Now, what about my warm tones? This is raw sienna. It's okay, but it's a little bit brown. And I think it may go a little bit green when I mix it. Let's try my quinacridone rust. This is a beautiful colour. Look at this. Right, so that's a very nice warm colour. So I can see how that could look like the right colour in the background. Yeah, okay. So I like my quinacridone rust. This is burnt sienna. Now that's very nice as well. So actually at this point I would say, because these are all transparent, I would say this is a matter of choice, what your particular aesthetic is. And then you can always warm it up a little bit more. Some of this gorgeous azo orange, look at that. I might actually go with a mix of my quinacridone rust and my azo orange, but I think I might decide as I go. So I want you to make your choices as you go as well. So you're going to go cool, warm in the middle, cool and dark as you come to the bottom. So I've got tubes of paint because they're easier to work with if you want a lot of colour. Now I've worked the last couple of weeks with Cotman pans, and it's quite hard because they're student grade colours. They're very good, but it's hard to get enough pigment out to make things dark enough. So this time I want to work with the artist grade paints and tubes, because when you do that you get an awful lot of pigment. It's much easier to get the really, really dark tones, because if you look down at the bottom of this painting, can you see how dark these are? These are actually, they're black, but they're not black, if that makes sense. The lightest parts are here, but they're not white, so we want a very, very light wash over that. So we're going to start by, I want to do wet in wet wash, and we're going to start by getting a lot of water on the paper. Now, if you're working with a good watercolour paper, it will require a lot of water to make it wet. The advantage of a really good watercolour paper is the water kind of sinks into the paper, so the paint spreads properly. Cheaper paper, the paint will sit on the top and you'll get pooling and you'll get runbacks. So I am going all the way down with water on this. My board is at a slight angle so that I should get some beading at the bottom. You can see here I've got some beading at the bottom. Now if you're in a hot country you will need more water, but you want this to be quite wet. It's taped down because if it wasn't it would start to curl a bit. You want it to be quite wet. Now I'm going to go in with my Prussian at the top, and I want quite a lot of pigment, but I don't want to add any more colour in. So as it comes down, I'm going to put my clouds on after. As it comes down, it's going to get lighter and lighter. And I think I can probably still go in a bit darker up here and bring that down. You've got to work very quickly. You don't want it drying out. You want it to do its own thing. Now, as I come down, I'm going to go into this orange actually. Let's try this. Looks a bit brown because I didn't clean my brush off properly. Right, there we are. And that's actually kind of running up and down a little bit. I want it a little bit stronger in the middle. That's where my horizon's going to be. Comes down, it reflects into the water. I think it can be stronger. You know, you think it's too strong already, but I don't think with watercolour we don't go dark enough. We don't go bright enough because it dries so much lighter. Now coming down here, we have some really, really dark, almost. Look, see, that's running up again. I'm just going to take my brush, I'm going to dry it off a bit, and I'm just going to merge that a little bit. And down here, I'm going to put in a little bit of alizarin, I think, to make this darker, because this still isn't dark enough. There we are. And some more. And I want a bit of movement, so I'm going to put it over there. Work really fast, that makes that quite purple. Pick up all of my pigment from here. And then I'm going to stop, because if I carry on, I'm just going to make problems. Now, I need to pick up all of this water around the edge, because if I don't, I'm going to get cauliflowers. It's going to run back into the paint that started to dry. So lift all of this out around the edge. You see how it's pooling at the bottom? And you want it to pool, but you don't want it to stay there. You're getting rid of all of this. And then we kind of have to wait for this to dry. So I've got some streaks in the sky, but that's one of the things about watercolour is you can only control it so far. The more you understand about how your paper and your paints work, the more chance you have of controlling it. But part of the beauty of watercolour is it does its own thing. And sometimes you just have to let it. Still down here, I think I could go darker, but I'm going to do that later on with a wash. Now what I might do is take a hairdryer to this to dry it out. But while I'm actually, rather than that, what we'll talk about is how do we put this boat in. So we have a great capacity to paint what we think we see and not what we actually see. So one of the best ways of doing something like this is when this is dry, is to try and actually look at it as a shape, and sometimes turning things upside down really helps. But I'm looking at this boat and it's a bowl shape like this. And it will be reflected identically underneath. The difference underneath is you will have some of these lines breaking. The mast will be a bit wibbly wobbly, and the further away it goes, the more ripples they are, the longer the mast will look. And then just treat it like a shape. So it's kind of a bit like this. Got a little bit on there. Now I would recommend using a ruler or something for your mast, because it's really difficult to get them right if you have if you're trying to do it with a brush. But look at where the mainsail's tied onto it. We'll look at where your mast comes in. It comes right in the centre of the boat. It will come out the bottom exactly the same, and this is just a little silhouette. So this you can paint in afterwards. And then you have your horizon line at the back, which comes midway up actually through the boat. Comes across here, and you have this kind of thing coming down and across at the back. It's been nice to put one little boat in. I'm not necessarily sure where it is ideal, because it's right on the horizon. So let's put it just a little bit lower than the horizon. And I'm not drawing this on my picture yet. I'm just having a bit of a practice for what's going to happen. So this is all in silhouette, but can you see how the reflection comes down here? And then we've got these beautiful patterns coming across here of dark shapes and a little bit of light in here. And that, if you look at the picture, that is what draws our eye. It's that boat in the middle. Or actually, we want it slightly off centre. We don't want it directly in the middle for aesthetics reasons. And then we've got some clouds up here. Now we can potentially do some of that wet in wet. We can put another wet wash on in a little while. Now you can usually tell if your paper's dry by touching it. So my paper is still quite damp. So I could actually use that to my advantage now by trying some clouds, because they will still run. They will go fluffy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to try, I'm going to practice. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to take my quinacridone rust and my blue, and can you see I've got a green there? So in order to avoid it going completely green, so you've got three primaries. Three primaries together will make a neutral. So if you mix two primaries, so let's say a blue and this is an orange, so it's more yellowy, you will get a green. But if I put in a red, I begin to get this lovely grey purpley colour. Look at this. So I've just lost my picture. I'm going to try and put some clouds in while it's still a bit wet. And I'm going to see just how, if it runs at all, if it runs a little, I can soften the edges. I'm using my brush on the side so that I'm not really controlling it. You can use the texture of the paper. But can you see how adding in that little bit of alizarin to that green has given it a nice kind of grey? Right, now I've just got a clean brush. It's a bit damp, it's not too wet, and I'm going to soften some of the edge. Get my clouds. I want to soften. I want some hard edges, but not all. Just soften some. In fact, I've softened most. So while this is wet, I can actually drop a little bit more in. And I might go a little bit more grey by adding in a little bit more blue. That's going to darken up some of the area, but because it's still wet, it's going to give me a slightly darker look in some places. It's dried up a bit up there. I'm just kind of making it up now. I'm not necessarily following the photograph. And here, where I've got hard lines, I'm just going to soften it down. Take this down. Okay. Need to get my picture back. Bear with me. Right, see if there's any questions. Hi, Kathy. Thanks for joining. Right. Now, where do I want my horizon? I want it kind of in the middle of the orange part. So I quite like this. If you use the Prussian blue or whichever dark blue you have, and I used 3 primaries will give you a neutral. So I've got, I suppose my primary is, I was actually using the orange. So I've got my blue, my orange, and then if I add in some of my alizarin, which is still in the tube because it dried out, I should get a very, very dark neutral. It's gone a bit too red, so I'm going to add in some blue. That's too blue. Let's come back to my orange. That's gone a bit green, a bit more red, and we will get there. How's that? That's a good neutral. So, where do I want my horizon? I'm going to put it in the middle here. I don't want it in the middle of my paper, so I want it kind of about there, which is just a little bit lower. And I'm just going to use a bit of paper to get my actual line. And this needs to be dark, and it needs to be much darker than you think it needs to be. And I might warm it up a little bit because that looks a bit, what do I call it? Green. Looks a little bit green. but it needs to be dark, because what's caught our eye about this is this difference between the light and the dark. So you need, and I think one of the challenges I've always found with watercolour is because it needs to be really dark. It's hard to paint really dark with watercolour. We're used to doing it with oils and things, but we're just not that used to doing it with watercolour. So now I need some reflections down here. Well, I think that looks a bit rubbish, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. Let's just put a little bit of, join it up a little bit. There we are. Yeah, we've got some darks. I've got some of this dark colour, and I'm going to come in and do some dark washes down here. And I haven't put that light in that I talked about. I haven't left it protected. So I'm going to have to put it in, maybe with some white afterwards. But can you see how down here it gets very, very dark? So I'm going to go in right across here from the bottom, working up with a wash. And there are some more scattered shadows over here. I'm trying to keep these a bit warmer, these ones at the front. Got a little bit of alizarin in this lid here. But these are a little bit more purpley, these ones over here. Just coming in on the corners. I'm going to go in and do my boat last, really. Got some marks across here. Again, that's quite a nice neutral grey, but I wanted a little bit darker, so it's gone a bit green there, so I'm going to add in some more blue here. I've still got quite a bit of red in it, but I think I need a bit more. And I'm going to put this across the bottom again, go to even darker. There, that was darker. My dog tapping. Watch when you're doing your water. It's quite difficult actually, because your water will always be flat, but you do get some shadows, like this one looks like it's kind of going diagonal. I think that looks all right. I think if we add the boat in fairly soon. Right, so the name of the orange was Azo, M. Graham Azo Orange. It's really vibrant. It's just easier than making your own orange. And I thought about using burnt sienna, but it is a lot more brown. It doesn't give you, so in order to get that really warm colour, you'd probably have to add some yellow to it. So it was easier. If you've got a warm cadmium yellow, potentially you could use that. But I don't think it's quite as good as using that orange. I quite like the orange. So I think my paper in the centre is dry enough to try and put my boat in. Which is always the scary bit. How are we doing? I think I might need to use a slightly softer grey to soften some of this background first. So I've got a smaller brush and I'm going into this colour that I used down here. A little bit more blue and a little bit more alizarin, so it's like a purple. So it should, if I put it along the back here, can you see how it just softens that edge? Makes it look not quite so dense. Just because it looks a little bit too dense, I suppose, and there will be some reflection underneath. So again, just want that to be softer. That's a bit better, looks a little bit more natural. So let's try putting in my little dark boat, which is going to be up here somewhere. See, and this is my new brush, and it's really not very good. Look, you can see the end of it. It's a bit unwieldy. It'll do, but it's not great. And you'll have a little bit of reflection under here as well. And let's try and put in just a little mast. Scary bit. See, that's gone wonky. And it's too high. Same mistake I made last week. See if I can lift it out. Probably not, because I've got... I did this last week. Some people never learn. Oh. Try and get my brush clean. Oh dear, what a mess. This is where you go, oh, I think I might have got away with it. Now, I'm going to draw in my bigger boat. So what I was saying here, so I've done this shape here, and it comes up, but it comes over the background, and I don't want it right in the centre, so I'm going to put it about here. I'm going to draw the shape in first. Now if you do it too small to start with and you paint it in and you don't like it, it's not a problem, because you can make it bigger. But if you do it too big to start with, you're a bit scuppered. Right, so let's have a look. I'm not going to use that brush I used last time. I'm going to use one of these. It's a Rosemary & Co, so they are pretty good brushes. So it should be all right. So this is a dark, she says as it splits. Look, this is a dark grey. No, that brush is completely had it. I need to go and find a better brush. Bear with me. Let's try this one. This does go to a nice fine point. So this is almost like Payne's Grey, this colour. Well, it is like Payne's Grey. So let's put in the basic shape first. Comes down. I've gone too high up here, so it's lost its cabin on top. Right, and then this is going to be identical at the bottom. And as it comes down, you've got the light breaking through it, so you begin to get this effect of the reflection. Now I can see I can still go darker because I haven't gone too dark already. I can go darker. So let's mix up a little bit more of this dark. I'm going to put the Quin Rust in rather than the alizarin. It should give me a really, really dark. That's a very dark green, look. So I am going to put a bit of alizarin in because that will temper it. If you want to know more about colour mixing, and it really is a science of its own, then come over to my Skool, my free Skool community, because I'm going to start doing some proper colour mixing sessions in there. I'm going to have a paid community, but I've got a free community, and that's already got quite a bit in, including some soft pastel workshops and some basics on watercolour. Right, how's this looking? When I first started painting, the very first thing I did was a 3-day colour mixing course, and I can't tell you how useful it was, because I know if I need a particular colour, I know how to mix it. Right, that's in silhouette. Now I may very well use a what I was trying to say was make sure when you're doing water it's horizontal and not flowing uphill. Can you see? It needs to go in a certain direction. Down here it kind of is flowing a little bit uphill. But you kind of can tell, because it's near the foreground, that that's just movement in the water. Whereas in the distance, it would be completely flat. See how dark you can go with this? Over in the corner, over on the edges of my pictures, you can see dark down here and up here, and that is just because of the shutter that I had on my camera didn't work properly, so don't paint it in. Right. So to get the atmosphere, you need it to be pretty dark. Even here, horizontal. Okay. I think I got away with my just. Ooh. Get that off before it dries. I think I'm going to use a pen to put my mast in, because I just don't think it's very easy with a brush. But first of all, I'm going to try and soften some of this up here. I've got some hard edges. I don't want too much movement in my sky because I want all the focus to be down here. But I quite like the clouds, and I think I could probably drop a little bit more wet water on there and put some more clouds in. So I'm just going to put a wash right across here. Have a go anyway. Drop some of this cloud colour, needs a little bit more red in it, a bit more grey. There we are, look, so that's running now. So you've got a much softer, so I've done it wet in wet. You've got that softer look. And over here, that's better. If I drop a little bit of something even darker in the middle here, and just let it do its own thing. It looks a bit too patterned, that, but a bit of spontaneity. Okay, I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chat, and then I'm going to draw in my mast, which will actually, now I've put the water on the clouds, going to make life really hard. Right, I'm going to go and get a pen. So, yeah. Oh, dog, squashing. I'm squashing my dog in the door. Okay. Can't find my pens. So I'm going to draw in my mast with a pencil, and then I will find my pen and do it again. So I'm just going to use something straight, and the mast comes out sort of at the front. This is slightly at an angle, this boat, so it's going to come up here, and it's important to look at how high does it come. So that's there, and then you've got a couple of very thin lines of the ropes that come sort of from the almost top of the mast, but not quite. I don't know where all my micron pens have gone, but that's what I'd use, is a micron pen to put that in. Now I still want to make that darker. That's my one that fell apart. So let's go back into a dark mix. So I've got my blue and my quin azo, my quinacridone rust. This is a bit green still, so there we are. Put a little bit of red in. It's opposite to turn it into a bit more of a neutral. There we are. Now I can make this properly dark. And it doesn't matter if it's not all completely dark, because the sun, the light will be kind of shining off it a bit. Now, what do I think of that? I think some of this needs to be darker. And I think this can have a bit of a, because you would actually have areas that were a little bit darker and a little bit lighter. Okay. Anything else I need to look at? Not quite sure what that was. I think my dog wants to go and chase a flies. I'm going to let him out. Okay. Oh, that was a bit of a shock. Oh, my dog just wanted to go and chase something. Right. There we are. That's a bit darker. I want to join up a little bit, and where I've got to put in my mast. Where I've got my mast coming down here, it will be wibbling and wobbling through the water, coming all the way down into here. Now, I can't find my things. I'm going to put this in here. I've got a bit of a wibbly wobbly mast, and it's because my paper's kind of warped a little bit. But I think actually I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to have a look. I'm going to stand up and have a look at it from the top. And I think I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me. Do show me what you create. It's interesting to look because you can see this was really dark when I put it on, but look how much it's lightened up. So you could still go in with even darker colour. You could definitely have more blue across here, and I could put another wash of phthalo across there actually. Yeah, I won't do it now. But it's all trial and error, experimenting. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do share what you've done in my community on Skool, SKOOL, Julie Ford Calm Art. The links are in the description. If you've enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up and subscribe, share it with friends, and come and join us over on Skool. Thank you. Happy painting. Bye.